A couple of days ago, Twitter user Sumizi made a tweet about Jujutsu Kaisen possibly closing its final curtains at the end of 2024, saying that the series would not be present in Jump Festa 2025. In response, a ton of loyal Gege Akutami and Jujutsu Kaisen fans came out of the woodwork, decrying that would not be happening and demanding for sources, saying Gege had expressed a similar sentiment of the story ending in 2023, and we are almost halfway through 2024 and still going strong. And you know what? Fair. I'm a huge One Piece fan, and if you're a fan of One Piece or just aware of it, like that ever present storm of way too many chapters and episodes, then you know that Eiichiro Oda has made various promises and declarations about the story finally coming to its end several times in the past, and every single time we get even more story, or Oda spent almost 5 years in Wano causing every single One Piece fan and theorist to debate whether or not the siege would fail. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And I'm sure it's not just Jujutsu Kaisen or One Piece. Manga history is littered with mangakas who made the certain promise of finishing their stories at a particular point or date, only for it to keep going. And then there are those like George Morikawa who has stated that Hajime no Ippo is just halfway done, which, excuse me? Power to the fans. It looks like Mori has plans to keep you all fed for a long time. I pray the heavens keep him safe, protected, and healthy to deliver on that. Good for you all. But just as we have mangakas who are ready to keep going for another 40 years, we also have those like Kohei or Rikoshi who clearly just wants to wrap up their stories and are trying to do so in a way that feels authentic to what they've told so far. Because yes, just like a lot of fans, I've complained about how the final arc of Boku no Hero Academia seems to be rushed through, but I cannot argue with the fact that it is staying true to the main themes of the story and the essence of its characters. Deku's power-ups might have been going way too fast, that it doesn't seem that he's earned them as much, but he is still Deku, working hard, trying to save the world with a heroism that is contagious to everyone who's met him or interacted with him in some way. So much so that we are all cheering him on, united in one voice as we say, "You can do it, Midoriya." So, no matter how quickly we get to the end of My Hero Academia, the hope stays consistent for me. It has always been a hopeful manga, and as we race quickly to its end, I retain that hope. That hope that good will triumph, that sure some characters are dead and more might pass on, but the world that will be left after it all will be a kind one, a better one that hopefully realizes that villains are made, not born, and everyone should be extended the grace of at least a chance to be good. I feel hopeful about how happy and satisfied and content and at peace I would be at the end of My Hero Academia. And if I'm being honest, I feel that same level of hope about the ending of One Piece, of Tensei Slime, of Spy Family, and the Apothecary Diaries. I did not feel that way about Shingeki no Kyojin, i.e. Attack on Titan, and I was right. Because that ending, gods. And I also do not feel that way about Jujutsu Kaisen. Before I go on, I would like to state that these are my thoughts and opinions. You can share yours in the comments. I don't mind. We all love manga and anime. It's different genres and different flavors they bring to our lives, and we all want different things from our stories. So I know what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa, and that is okay. Oh, also, there will be some spoilers, so do keep that in mind. But I'm sure to alert you when you're about to be spoiled with one hand up until I'm done with the spoilery bit. But back to what I was saying. I, for example, like for my manga to deliver on the promises it's made me. The promises that got me invested in the story in the first place. That is what keeps me attached to it. I never got into Berserk, for example, because I knew I wasn't quite ready yet for that level of depression and devastation and gore. It is a fantastic story, and I know when I do get around to reading it, because I will. because I do enjoy the occasional grimdark fantasy stories, I will know what I've signed up for and brace myself for it at that point. Better for me to go through the story expecting everybody and their mother to die and be pleasantly surprised if one person survives at the end of it all than for me to think that the good guys will always triumph and might take a couple of casualties, but not that much. Can you all tell that I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion as a child and it scarred me? And you all also tell that Jujutsu Kaisen has contributed to that trauma. Because, see, when I got into the series, it was just after the first anime episode dropped back in 2020. We got introduced to Itadori, and I was hooked by the world, fell in love with all the characters in the order in which they appeared. By the time we met Gojo and Megumi, Nobara, and my king and queen, Nanami and Maki, I was ready to lay down my life. I knew the world of Jujutsu Kaisen was brutal. You had people being killed by curses from the very first episode. So I was aware that the death toll would definitely be high. But the entirety of the start of the story made it seem like, sure, everyone else was in danger, but the core trio of Megumi and Itadori and Nobara with their sensei Gojo were going to make it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's obvious to everyone that that dynamic was meant to replicate the Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura camaraderie. Itadori has Naruto's high octane energy and zero filter. Megumi gets Sasuke's broodiness and familial baggage. Nobara, like Sakura, is a female fighter who also likes being girly and is often underestimated as a result of that. Although Nobara always delivers on the retribution for the mistake. Sakura less so. And then there's Gojo with the eye patch that makes me think of Kakashi Sensei. It was all there. And I was working under the assumption that since it was clear that Gege's plan was to subvert those expectations and improve on what we got with Naruto, I mean, as much as I am team Sakura gets way too much misplaced hate when the person everyone should be pissed at is Masashi for writing her in such an atrocious way, I see where the hate is coming from. And Nobara seems so better written and clearly knows and shows her place within the trio. I didn't realize that part of subverting that trope and that relationship dynamic would be to destroy everything about it. So I was blindsided when, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the anime or read the manga, when Nobara dies. It was brutal. Add the fact that we lost both Nobara and Nanami, Gojo was sealed, Mahito was taken off the board, and Shibuya left me reeling. Nothing I'd expected and hoped to happen happened. The ground I thought I was standing on shifted irrevocably in a way that I hadn't experienced in a long time. The last time I think I was that devastated was when I read the Red Wedding scene for the first time in A Storm of Swords back in 2012. Right? Yeah, 2012. Sometimes you get an experience like that when interacting with a piece of media and you are utterly changed and transformed. The Noria that existed pre Shibuya isn't the same Noria you're seeing today. That was the peak of Jujutsu Kaisen for me. I called my best friend who loves manga as much as I do and told her because, see, after the first episode of Jujutsu Kaisen dropped in October of 2020, I wanted more and couldn't wait. So I tapped open my Shonen Jump app and went diving, reading the chapters as quickly as I could consume them. And when the Shibuya arc concluded, I needed several breaths to try and make sense of the world as it was then. So like I said, I called my best friend to rant, to rage, to cry. And after I was done, I kept right on reading. Because sure, Gege had blindsided me with something I didn't see coming. I thought my core trio at the very least would remain standing, but I was still having a blast and was interested in seeing if, one, spoiler alert, Nobara's death would stand. I belong firmly in the camp that even though we saw her head halfway split, I was convinced that In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, there has to be a power where she can be restored after she was preserved. That was the second lesson that Gege taught me. Dead means dead, and there's no coming back from it, no matter how beloved a character is. I kept plodding on though. The Itadori examination arc picked up from where Shibuya left off, and I was so happy to see Yuta, then terrified for Itadori again. Then came the preparation arc, and then we entered the calling games. And that for me was where things went supernova on a scale of what on earth is Gege thinking or planning or even doing. We got a bunch of power introductions. Half of them left me so confused, like for real. Look me in the eye. Look me in the eye and swear on your ancestral grave that you understood the concept and the scale or scope of Akari's Panchiko machines based power. Swear it. Because if you did understand it, then congratulations. You must be one of the smartest people in any room you enter. And that is something to be proud of because I still don't get it. That entire fight had me cross-eyed. Sometimes I slip into nightmare mode in my head, and that is what I see, an absolute nightmare. And now we are in the Shinjuku showdown arc, and the last couple of chapters are expanding on a physics concept that makes zero sense to me because my ass wasn't a science student, and the last time I took a science specific course was when I was 16, and that course was biology. I didn't understand physics then, and I don't understand it now. And to be quite honest, as someone who reads a ton of science fiction books and whose favorite video game of all time is the Mass Effect trilogy, I blame my not understanding what is happening right now on Gege not explaining the physics concept properly. Because why do I understand it when others say it? And when it comes to him, I'm left all confused. Gege, please, after your career as a mangaka is done, for the sake of your possibly future students, go retire on an island somewhere. Don't take up teaching, especially not teaching physics. But back to what I was saying at the very start of this video, which sets me off on this tangent. Can you all tell I have ADHD? I do agree with Twitter user, I'm never calling it X, Sumizi's postulated suggestion about the possible ending of Jujutsu Kaisen this year. Because kind of like with My Hero Academia, this present arc does feel like we are racing to the end. Sukuna has shown us is ultimate power, ultimate power so many times now. I've personally lost all respect for the word ultimate power because I'd always attributed it to being some sort of finishing move that you do once and that is it. You've used up all the gas in the tank. But Sukuna's gas is still going strong. We've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at him at this point, and he is still going strong. Gege is finally remembered that Itadori is meant to be the main character of the story, and if you're one of those Itadori Yuji isn't the real protagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen, or Itadori Yuji is useless as a main character, people, keep those comments to yourself. Argue with the wall, because I'm not going to waste my time arguing with you. Itadori is the main character of the story. Is the connecting thread that holds the pulse of Jujutsu Kaisen. And if we want to play it right, ideally, it should be central to the defeat of Sukuna and later Kenjaku as well. But because Gege prided himself on subverting expectations, he might not take that route. And that is why I find it all hopeless. Because storytelling at its core is about upholding the promises you've made to your readers throughout the course of the story you're sharing with them. If you introduce us to a protagonist, they should be a core part of the story from the start to the end. It is a promise of keep an eye on this person. They will be at the heart of the storm. Root for them, hate them, worry for them. Hi, Eren. But no matter what journey their path and the story takes them, you will meet them at the end. That is a core part of stories. It is why, for example, everyone was shocked shocked at the beheading of Ned Stark in A Game of Thrones book and show. Because George R. R. Martin lured us into a false sense of complacency and belief that Ned was one of the main characters. It wasn't. And that's what Gege is doing with Jujutsu Kaisen as well. People thought Nobara was one of the main characters. Spoiler alert again, but Gege offed her without even bothering with concluding her story arc. He removed her from the board and then he did the same with Gojo. Although, to be fair, I don't think a lot of people thought Satoru Gojo was a main character in Jujutsu Kaisen. Let me know in the comments if you thought he was one of the main characters. Megumi, however, has been out since Sukuna, once again, spoiler alert, took control of his body. Now, I know manga doesn't really function quite like novels in that we don't get point of view characters in these stories, but it's natural that a lot of readers assume that these characters are co-protagonists in this story. But Gege has brutally proven to us that Itadori is the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen, and that is fine. The only problem is that as we speed our way to the end of the story, I start wondering, if you want to tell a compelling story that resonates and feels true to its main character's values, see my earlier conversation about Orikoshi and where it's visibly taking Midoriya's story, then there has to be a payoff for the character and the reader. What does your main character want? How close are they to seeing that accomplished? What do they need to make that happen? What obstacles can be placed in their way to keep them from reaching that goal? How can they overcome these obstacles and earn their desire? What can be set in the story to make that possible? In the very first episode and chapter, when we meet Itadori Yuji, he's about to lose his grandfather, who before he passes away, asks Itadori to use his abilities and gifts to save people, and to make sure that when he does finally die, he dies surrounded by others, and not alone, like his grandfather was. Everything Itadori has done up to this point is in alignment to his grandfather's words. But now we are seeing practically everyone he knows and cares about dying in this final fight with Sukuna, and so I find myself filled with this hopeless, numb feeling. Who would be left to mourn Itadori when he dies? Would everything he's worked for, how hard he's tried to follow his grandfather's words, it's the reason why he joined the club back in chapter 1 after all be for naught? How does that not fill anyone with this bone-weary fatigue? Because sure, Gege is currently on his strip of "I'm the baddest mangaka and unlike others, I can and will kill everyone and make sure they stay dead." And that's all well and good. But what happens when that goes against what would best serve Itadori's story? How do we finish Jujutsu Kaisen without just feeling fatigued? Why kill everyone for the sake of killing them without any consideration or thought to the characters you've set up prior? Maybe I'm just the odd one out, but I've always believed that the characters come before the plot. The plot serves the characters to encourage their growth and contribute to their stories. The characters shouldn't serve the plot. But like I said, maybe it's just me. Let me know which you think matters more in the comments, character or plot. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I make new manga/anime related content on Mondays at 5 p.m. EST. If you also like bookish type content, those drop on Fridays at 5 p.m. EST. I am currently making a series of discussion-based videos on the new season of Bridgerton. So if that is your cup of tea as well, then be sure to stick around. Once again, a huge thank you to my Patreons who support and encourage me to keep making these videos. If you'd like to join my community of fellow nerds that I'm building, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in my description box. Until the next video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.